Friends, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be. And we have a very special broadcast today. Now, this is interview number 15 with self aware narcissistic psychopath HG Tudor. And I figured we'd do something a little bit different this time because, it marking our 15th interview with this man, where we'll open it up to a Q&A. And as you can see below, you guys can ask questions by putting a few question marks to help it stand out in the chat. And if you're on HG's channel, because we're broadcasting simultaneously, you can throw up a super chat and that'll help us see it too. Let me just show you real quick what's been going on. So we have a whole series on the channel, Dazed But Not Confused, where he has broken everything down from, as you can see, Charles Manson. We take up cults, narcissist pandemic, royal narcissism, etc., etc., etc. So we have 15 interviews, this being the one that we're doing today, the special Q&A. HG Tudor's channel is Knowing the Narcissist, the Ultra. 1,000 subscribers. He's about to hit the 200,000 K mark. Jesus Christ, very impressive. 6,300 videos. If you guys don't know who he is, since we have new people coming in all the time, quick blurb about what HG is about. Learn about narcissists from the world's #1 source, a narcissist himself. That's key, by the way, my friends, and why this man's material became relevant rather than just reading some dry books about this shit. So this is where you get the brutal truth, not the nonsense that's churned out by people who don't understand narcissism and give you bad information, incomplete information, and dangerous information. Why do I tell you all this? See my video. Why am I doing this? That's a common question, especially when people are new to HG's work. That will be linked in the description box. And he offers... You can find him at Narc site and see what he offers on there. He does private consultations. You can take a Narc detector to find out if a loved one, a spouse, or a friend is a narcissist. There's Empath detectors to detect if you're an empath, etc. So without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour himself. And then, guys, please pose your questions, and we'll get on with it. HG, how are you doing?
Hello, Dirk.
Hey, how are you, my man?
I am excellent. Well, thank you for your kind inquiry. How are you?
Not too shabby, my man. It's good to hear from you again. It's been a little while.
It has.
So why don't Yes. Let me put you at the, that's appropriate, right? You at the top and me at the bottom. We can't have it any other way, right, sir?
I'll be a gentle lover for you.
Okay. Would you like to start out with a little challenge fuel here first in the comments? How dare someone
Why
say
not?
that?
Bring it to me.
Okay. Let's see here. Take a load of this, HG. Shelly, hi, Doug. Long-time watcher, first-time chat. I have to say you're my favorite. Enjoy listening to HG too. What say thee to me being the favorite, HG?
Well, that's bound to be the prejudice of the empaths all ganging up against me. And I'm quite happy for that to be the case. After all, I know that I'm the superior being here, Doug. And you know
I know that too, HG. That's
exactly.
why we keep getting interviews.
So if they wish to express a favorite, that's okay. Particularly as it's spelt the American way and not the British way, it doesn't really count. So there's my deflection.
Shelly, I'm sorry, man, that this is your first chat. He's brutal, but he has spoken. Welcome, my friend, by the way. Francine, appertaining to the empath. So HG, I would have answered questions on the empath detector quite differently 20 years ago. Would that cause inaccurate results?
No, the way that it's designed is that naturally with anything, you're going to get slight deviations. So for instance, if you answer it when you're experiencing a difficult period in your life, and then you answer it when those stresses have gone, you will notice some differences in the outcome. There'll be some percentage changes, but the fundamental is going to remain the same, because that's the way that it has been designed, that no matter what is going on the surface, the fundamental of who you are still comes through. That's the way that it's been designed to pick up on that. So you'll get the adjustments around the periphery, but the core of what you are still comes through.
Great question. Great answer to the question, ma'am. By the way, guys, this is the first time we're doing the live, so I hope I'm not too distracting, but I am focusing on HG while pulling up your questions, and they're pouring in, so we're not necessarily going to be able to get to all of these, so I apologize in advance. But I wanted to hit this real quick, HG, because we do have new people coming in quite often. And we get people asking questions like this simply because they've watched one video or they hear the voice and they don't know to trust you or not, or who the hell is this guy? And this has come up
Yep.
more than once. And I think it'd be a good way for you to introduce yourself to people that might be new or have just only heard one video. So this person says, I have a strong feeling that HG Tudor is just a character played by a phony. It's not really a narcissistic psychopath. Sorry, but I study psychology in my class, and I know about these things. What say thee?
Well, the major problem with that is that that individual's operating on a feeling rather than actually utilizing the evidence. So I regularly explain to people that relying upon feelings is not a particularly appropriate way of making decisions. You ought to look at the evidence. Now, the evidence supports what I am, and this person is perfectly entitled to express an opinion, but it's not a particularly well-founded one. Not only is it wrong, but it's only just based upon a feeling and saying, oh, I study psychology, so I know better. The fact is, if this individual were to speak to the people that I've interacted with, the good doctors, victims, etc., they would come to a different conclusion. Quite simply, they're looking to draw a bit of attention to themselves as a consequence of flexing because, oh, I study psychology, therefore I'm able to make an assessment about me. I'd encourage that individual to read the work, watch the videos. I suspect it's a fairly superficial analysis. And occasionally people do come out with that they put forward that view, but it is wholly inaccurate. The evidence speaks for itself.
I also get some unaware narcissists, HG, that creep in. There's no convincing them. There's no. We've talked about the self-defense mechanism, my friends, what prevents that from happening. But I swear, HG, every once in a while, there'll be a know-it-all that comes in, and they're insufferable because they can't see their own problem, right?
Well,
do you have any tips on how to handle those people, by the way? What do you just ignore them?
The most effective thing is ignore them, and that will really infuriate them.
Mm-hmm.
With certain individuals, invariably, because they're so far up their own backside, they will make mistakes, and therefore the appropriate thing to do is point out those mistakes, not with a view to causing their view because they're incapable of doing so, but use them as an example for everybody else. So on my blog, when we get a narcissist that's unaware that comes in, my readers invariably talk about me having left the window open because they fly in and shit everywhere like a pigeon that's flown in. And so what I do is I utilize that person by way of an example. So I point out the errors that they're making in what they've written, not because I'm seeking to persuade them, because I know that's futile, but simply as an example for my readers. And ditto, that may occur in the context of YouTube as well, where there might be instances when I have time and I go into the comment section and see someone who's trying to be a know-it-all and they're putting forward fundamentally incorrect information. I will, not because I know that they're going to go, oh, actually, HG, you're absolutely right, but rather so that my viewers can see that and they can form their own conclusions. They're able to look at the exchange of information themselves, who's actually providing the correct information and who it is who's coming along being aware.
A weapons grade helmet. That's a new one, man. Next question is, where do you come up with these awesome comebacks and stuff? Surely you have a head filled with these quick quips, right? Because you must deal with these people all the time.
Part of it's natural wit and some of its character trait acquisition. So I'll have heard that response elsewhere and my mind has purloined it for my use. And so some of it's original material that just comes from me. Others, I've heard it elsewhere and thought, that's a good line sometime.
Mostly character trait acquisition. You hear something and you add it to the arsenal.
Most of it's original that I just think up as I'm going along. But it's like being a musician, isn't it? There's always going to be some kind of influence somewhere in the creation of what you do,
That's
even
true.
if it's subconscious. So there'll be instances where I perhaps have read something or heard something, and it's a pithy comeback. Sometimes I do it deliberately, knowing that it's somebody else's comeback. It might be a famous response, like Winston Churchill when he was insulted by a woman in the House of Commons, where she said, "You're drunk." And he said, "And you're ugly, but in the morning I'll be sober." So you can use that similarly to deal with people where they insult you, and you can go back at them and say, "And you're an idiot, but in the morning, I'll still be this and you won't be." So in those instances, some people will pick up on that and realize that it's Churchill's comeback. And whilst that's character trait acquisition, one mentions it knowing that people are going to spot it. In other instances, it's wholly original that I've created.
They are really funny too, man. I'm sure your sense of humor is what attracts many, many viewers. Now let's get down to the most important question here, HG. Do you have any tips for giving up smoking?
Yeah, don't start in the first place.
What do you mean?
Well, as you're there with your death,
Come
truly filthy
on.
habit.
Tell me how you really feel. Sorry. This person inspired me, HG. I figured I could get away with it.
Well, tips for giving up smoking. Well, you've got to be able to want to do it, haven't you? And then at the end of the day, if you derive pleasure from doing it, knowing that you're affecting your health, go ahead, fill your boots.
Wow.
It's your life. But if you decide I've had enough and I want to smell better, taste better, add some years to my lifestyle, be able to run around without going, then that's the basis for saying, right, I'm going to stop. It's about personal willpower.
Okay, that's good advice. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're not a smoker?
You're absolutely right. I'm not a smoker. I think it's a filthy habit.
Okay, I'm actually going to put
But
it
I won't
out,
let
man.
it come between us. I won't let it come between us.
Oh my God. No, I feel rude actually doing that. It's going out,
No,
man.
you can smoke. Do you mind if I masturbate while you smoke?
Okay, that's a fair. I won't feel as bad if it. Sure.
Okay.
I don't hear it though, HG. I guess you're doing it
I'll fap a bit
privately.
louder in a moment for you. I'm just getting started.
Please don't. Another very important question. Oh my God, this is getting off to a great start, man. I knew he would come alive, guys, if we did it live rather than just pre-recorded, man. We covered this before, Sally, on one of the interviews in the past. I don't remember what it was, but maybe he can go into more detail. I assume that I probably know what the answer to this is, HG, but do you believe in God, sir?
I have a tremendous amount of self-belief, so absolutely I believe in myself. If you're
That's a great
referring
answer.
to the individual commonly worshipped by many millions around the globe, I believe in God when it suits me to do so. So the default position is I do not. But if I deem that it would be appropriate for me to have a belief in God, then I will do so. That's the beauty of the flexibility that I have.
That's true. That's very interesting. And that would also explain why many cult leaders can appear to be, quote, spiritual, because they're putting on a facade, or they need to be, right? But they don't really
It's
believe in it
interesting
generally.
because people often suggest, how could a narcissist believe in a higher power? Because that would mean believing in someone better than you. But the point is that, as I've explained in numerous of my videos dealing with religion and with cult leaders, and we've spoken about it before, Doug. And when I spoke about the Holy Narcissist, the concept of a powerful imaginary friend is a huge, brilliant tool for an earth-dwelling individual to assert control over people. If you don't do what I say, you're going to burn in a lake of fire. If you don't give me a tenth of what you produce, you're going to suffer damnation. If you don't live your life in accordance with the way that I tell you, then you're not going to get into heaven. So it's a brilliant way of controlling people. And that's why religion, be it formal organized religion or cults or spiritual sects, are fantastic honeypots for narcissists to dwell in. They, of course, attract empathic people as well, who live their lives in a way of caring for people. But religion very much is a honeypot. And it's similar where I would utilize religion. So, for instance, I was brought up in a church background because I attended a church school. So sort of religion is part of my background. But I don't subscribe to it, save where I see a use to do so. Therefore, if I have a target who is particularly religious, then I'll mirror her for the purposes of saying, oh, yes, I go to church, I believe, etc. Perhaps haven't been as often as I ought to have done, but and then talk about religious aspects as well as part of the mirroring to ensure that individual's brought under control. So it's there, like anything else, to be utilized as an advantage.
Interesting. You said you personally were brought up in church. Did you have any beliefs at that time, or did they alter? Just curious.
Well, I was brought up at a Church of England school, and so it was a case of having to have regular church attendance, and religion formed part of the daily assembly that we had, and so forth. There were relevant religious education lessons as well. So there was a considerable emphasis upon it. One went along with the lessons. I found it interesting just in terms of storytelling and the way that it impacted on people. I didn't believe. I saw that a lot of it didn't really add up because I have a naturally cynical mind.
Mm-hmm.
However, that was the environment that I was brought up in, and it provided me with a useful insight with regard to the church and those that function and operate within it, and enabled me, of course, to utilize that information again by way of character trait acquisition in my interactions with people. It also assisted with part of the facade, of course, by portraying myself as at this stage, I'm a teenager. So I'm portraying myself as a God-fearing, church-going individual. That serves one well in the local community because you're then seen as a reliable individual. It gives you that mantle of credibility. So when it came to some of the actions that I was engaging in and then I was accused of things, I had this facade of, well, he goes to church and he's a good boy and he goes to church school. HG would never engage in igniting somebody's house and watching it burn to the ground. I think you've got the wrong person. So it was very useful to deflect blame, you see. So religion really did serve a purpose in that respect for me.
When you burnt the house down, for real?
Yes. I've always been a great fan of conflagration.
Interesting. So do serial killers and sociopaths and psychopaths, right? They do have a proclivity towards burning things for some reason. I mean, are you joking, HD, or is there something about psychopathy and burning things?
No, I'm not joking. You might have missed one of my videos, which is Burn Just for Me, where I talk about an instance of me doling out punishment on somebody's father because he criticized me and my friends for making fires in the back garden, sort of in the autumn and the winter. So I decided to burn down a small property of his, and I talk about that in the video. But fire starting is something that I did a lot of when I was a child. I've always had a fascination with just looking at the flames itself, but then as time went on, the interest became in the power of fire, the way that it's a cleansing force, that it doesn't discriminate, it consumes everything in its path. And that power is particularly attractive. Consequently, it was something, therefore, that I would regularly utilize in terms of setting things on fire, finding different ways of doing so, watching the different colors of flames, for example, when chemicals were added to the mix and so forth, throwing aerosols into braziers to cause them to explode and things and so forth. So absolutely, fire was... it did as it was told as well. One could direct it in a particular way, at least to begin with, and it didn't ask questions of you. It didn't challenge you. It just did. It was it's a sort of a deployment of it, if you will, which is particularly attractive.
Interesting. It sounds like also a metaphor for the narcissist themselves, like you just aptly described. Burn things down. It's like the Terminator, and it has no conscience.
Indeed, I think probably it was more apt to my psychopathy. It was with it's almost sort of emotionless, if you will, whereas the narcissist is more emotional psychopath. So I think it lends itself more to the psychopathic side of things. With that, I'll burn everything down if I don't agree with it, and also the fascination with, I wonder what will happen if I do this. There's a lot of that because it comes down again to the alleviation of the boredom. And
Interesting.
for instance, creating a sort of napalm effect to take out ants and flies and wasps and things like that, setting wasp nests on fire and so forth.
Did you have that? This is fascinating. Sorry if guys, I'll get to your questions in a second, but just one more thing on that. Did you have all the classic traits of hurting animals, setting things on fire as a kid and such?
Sorry, you broke up. Could you start the question again, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now, by the way?
Yes, I can.
Okay. As a kid, did you have some of the classic psychopathic traits such as harming animals, lighting things on fire and such? Was that
Yes.
as a kid?
Yes.
Okay. Peggy, we got your question firing in here. Thank you. Malignant or ultra narcissists are clinically known to have limited ability for self-awareness. So what is it about you personally, HG, that has enabled you to shatter that conception?
Well, it isn't the case that an ultra narcissist is clinically known to have limited ability for self-awareness at all. The very fact of being an ultra narcissist means one's aware and also able to convey the information. So the fact is, that's why I'm categorized as the ultra, because of the high level of self-awareness that I have and the capability and ability to share that information to people in a meaningful fashion. The reason that I'm able to do that is quite simply a combination of my cognitive function, my high executive function, and the way my narcissism has evolved is that I've been granted awareness. It's almost as if it trusts me to do right with it. I've often spoken about this before, that with lesser and mid-range narcissists, it's almost a case that if there was a god of narcissism handing out the different schools, would say to the lessers, okay, you're all lesser narcissists, so you're not going to operate with facades, you're going to be this, you're going to be this, you're going to be this, and as soon as you leave the headquarters of Narcissism Inc., you won't know what you are because we don't trust you with that knowledge. Mid-rangers, you are going to operate with a facade, you'll have this, you won't have this, and similarly when you leave Narcissism Inc., you similarly are not allowed to know what you are because we don't trust you to wield the narcissism properly with awareness. Now, you lot over there, you're the graters, you're allowed to know what you are because your form of narcissism is such that you'll be able to wield your narcissism and not fuck it up by being aware of what you're doing. So it's simply the way that it has evolved, and certain narcissists have evolved where they're not allowed to know, which is the bulk of them, because the self-defense mechanism basically says, I can't grant you consciousness of what you are, because if I were to do so, you almost like can't handle it. So it's a little bit with A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth. It's similar to that if they were granted that awareness, they'd almost freeze. They would hesitate and glitch. So they're not allowed to know. Whereas with the graters, they have the capacity to know what they're doing, and therefore they're allowed to know. And with me, I'm one step beyond that, because the ultra aspect of it comes from the self-awareness, but also the ability to explain it to people.
We really do appreciate that. And like I said, my friends, I'm going to link in the description box on my channel, Why Do I Do This, from HG Tudor, which is one of the most asked questions. If he's helping us out so much, if he's throwing his own kind under the bus and giving away the game, why the hell is he so, quote, empathic and helpful? He's not. He's doing it for his own reasons. That's the question comes up so much that I just link people to that video from now on. It's a really good question. Can you prevent a child from developing narcissism? Are there any ways to do that?
Yes. Don't have sex with a narcissist. That's
really?
one way. Yeah.
For the genetic predisposition?
So you avoid the genetic predisposition. If you've been caught out and you've played hide the sausage, or you've pounded the punani pavement with a narcissist, then in those circumstances, there is a risk that you're going to have a narcissist because of the genetic predisposition. But all is not lost. What you need to ensure that you do is that you prevent that child from being exposed to a lack of control environment. Do that, then you will prevent the child from becoming a narcissist. So imagine it's a cake. You've got the ingredients for the cake, which is the genetic predisposition, and it has to go into an oven at a particular temperature and for a particular period of time. What your job is to do is to ensure that you don't let the cake ingredients either go in the oven, Or if you do, you take them out as quick as you can and you keep switching the oven off. You basically interrupt any potential lack of control environment. And so that's how you prevent a child from developing narcissism. It may be that the genetic predisposition skips, so you needn't worry, but you just don't know. If you've conceived a child with a narcissist, there is a risk of the genetic predisposition being passed on. The lack of control environment, and I can see in the comments that someone's asking, what do I mean by that? So I'll expand. A lack of control environment is one where the child is exposed to, for example, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. A lack of control environment would be, for example, you're told, well, you scored 2 goals, why didn't you score 3? You got 75% in your examination, why didn't you get 80? So you climb a hill and there's another hill behind it. Or the child is always given everything on a plate. You're wonderful, you're brilliant, everything you do turns to gold, when actually it doesn't. So there's lots of different lack of control environments, and those are some examples of them. Invariably, of course, they are created by a narcissist as a parent, but sometimes they can be caused by a factor outside of the home. So it might be that a child abuser has access to a child at, say, Boy Scouts or at a sporting club, and that abuse creates the lack of control environment. Sometimes it can almost be like a short, sharp shock where the child witnessed something particularly horrendous, like, say, the death of their parents who aren't narcissists in a car crash. And so the genetic predisposition has come perhaps from grandfather, and they've got 2 non-narcissist parents who were killed in a car crash, which the child witnesses. That sudden lack of control environment, combined with the genetic predisposition that has come from grandfather, could forge a narcissist.
Very interesting. Can I ask you something?
Lack of control
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thanks for that breakdown, ma'am. I've always wondered when you say a lack of a controlled environment, what about too controlled of an environment? Like you might experience in a cult dynamic, which a family dynamic can sometimes. So, is that part of it? Mm-hmm.
When I talk about lack of control, that's from the child's perspective. So it could be an entirely chaotic environment. It could be a very rigid environment where you're told, be there, sit down, shut up, do this. The child has no control over what they do. So the lack of control is from the child's perspective.
That makes total sense. I figured as much, but some people, myself included, might get tripped up by the wording. So it's a lack of control from the child's perspective, whether that's over-controlled or not having enough loving in there, just allowed to kind of do whatever they want, basically, right?
Yeah.
Sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, Kalia. Doug, thank you for introducing me to HG. I am subscribed to him because of you. Awesome. He's brilliant. Yeah, he is. And he's helped save my life and many other people. He's brilliant, and he helps me in my line of work in the mental health field. I just want to say thank you. There's a little bit of fuel for you, HG. I mean, does that do anything for you? When you hear that a million times, does that do anything for you?
Yes, it provides that little buzz of fuel that's of a positive nature. I'm unsurprised by comments like that. I know the efficacy of my work, but naturally, it's always rewarding for me for people to express their gratitude and thanks, because it provides me with fuel and it extends my legacy. And so I'm always very pleased when I read about people's success stories and how my work has helped them, and especially those that work in the mental health field. I do have quite a number of psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists that utilize my work. And that's very rewarding. And they've got an open mind about accessing my work. And they realize just because of what I am, that's irrelevant ultimately, because the work speaks for itself.
Indeed. Can't argue with that. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce that, my friend. It's a little hard to see on the screen. Can you be a narcissist and a victim at the same time?
Well, in the mind of the narcissist, absolutely.
They're always a victim, right?
Indeed.
So to speak.
And also, a narcissist can be a victim of another narcissist. So the answer to that is yes.
Can you give that to us again? Was that?
I think I was just. I think that's what it was. Or was I just clearing my throat?
I don't know. You could be a closet smoker, where you were giving me shit earlier when people were accusing me in the chat, HG, of the cough that you just did.
I'm vaping like a dragon as we're talking.
Are you for real? Because that would make me less feel less guilty relighting up the
No,
cigarette
I'm
you
not
made me put
vaping
out?
either. No,
Oh my
no.
God. Couldn't you have just said yes for my own edification? Next question. Bothering strange love. Where is Doug in HG? Oh, that's a good question. So I think we've covered this before, HG, but where does an interviewer, like me, fit in your fuel matrix? Am I a secondary fuel source for the Ultra, if even that?
Yes, you are. You're not a tertiary source because we've spoken on many occasions and we've had back and forth on email and we've spoken in interviews. And so consequently, you're a secondary. Handsome as you are, I have no romantic aspirations towards you.
Come
Therefore,
on.
there's no intimacy. So sorry to disappoint you there, Doug. But
Fair enough.
so therefore, you're a non-intimate secondary source, and that's Doug's position in my fuel matrix.
And no offense, HG, and I know you won't take any, but thank God we just speak over the internet, and I'm not your intimate source. I'd imagine that would be a living nightmare.
It can have drawbacks.
I mean, for the person that you're ensnaring, right? Unless they know
Absolutely.
what they're dealing with.
Well, even if they were to know what they're dealing with, it's not really going to help them with me.
Why do you say that?
Well, because even if they have that knowledge, the way that I would still be able to manipulate them would impact upon them to such an extent that their knowledge would become worthless. If they did not remove themselves straight away, which is what they ought to do, if they think that with that knowledge that they can somehow endure me, then in those circumstances, that just shows that they're not paying attention to what they're truly being told.
Would they be able to use your work to get away from you?
Yes. But I would then, if I chose to, I may well hunt them down, or I may turn to something else and determine that they're not worth pursuing. It would depend upon circumstances at the time. As I've explained to people, that when you're dealing with the greater and the ultra, ultimately you've got to kind of almost curl up and play dead until the greater ultra just gets bored of you and moves on elsewhere. With lesser and mid-range, which for most people, that's what you deal with, no contact's hugely effective. But if a greater or the ultra wants to pursue you, you will be pursued. And your life will be made very difficult. The saving grace is the fact that the greater and the ultra have so many other things going on in their lives, other people in the fuel matrix, that ultimately we get bored of you. And therefore, if you make yourself boring, i.e. in effect play dead, we just think, no fun, go elsewhere.
What they call the gray rock. I know you probably don't use that term, but that's what you're saying.
You'd need to go even further than that. You'd have to go beyond grey rock, really be offering nothing. Batten down the hatches, stay out of the way as much as you possibly could, and not react. So essentially, the greater would just think, they're not giving me anything here. I've toyed with them for long enough. It's become boring now. I'll move on to something else.
Interesting. Teleperion, how are you, my friend? HG, what do you think about Doug calling you my friend? That's a great question. Doesn't your narcissism mean he can be your friend? Doesn't your narcissism mean he can be your friend? Do you mean can or cannot, telephone? But you can't be his in the true meaning of the word. Yeah, you don't have friends, right? True friends, bonding, so to speak.
I think what Teleperion's trying to suggest is that you could be my friend, but I can't be yours because of so you could regard me as a friend because you have the capacity for emotional empathy. I don't, and therefore wouldn't see you as a friend. I would give you the label as a friend because that's what, in the ordinary parlance of the world, our relationship would present as. But there is no attachment. You might be attached to me, but I'm not attached to you because I don't form any emotional attachments with anybody. So in terms of what do I think about Doug calling me my friend, well, that just provides me with fuel. It demonstrates that Doug is under control when he says it to me, and it provides me with a dollop of positive fuel. So it's all good. It's not a problem. It doesn't offend me. It doesn't cause me to think, well, actually, Doug, you're wrong. Because if Doug wishes to see me as his friend, that works for me because it demonstrates control and fuel. So that's absolutely fine. I also reference from time to time calling Doug my friend also in correspondence. And I do so because I know that Doug likes to be regarded as my friend. So that's my way of controlling him, by mirroring his language back at him. And
Exactly.
Doug is well versed enough in my material to understand that I won't regard him as a friend in the truest sense, as you just mentioned then, but recognizes that it's just a term of art that's utilized for the type of interaction that we use, rather than going around him saying to other people, "Oh, did you know I'm HG Tudor's non-intimate secretary source?" They'll go, "What the hell are you talking about?" Unless, of course, they're familiar with my material. So it's easier just to talk about being a friend.
Yeah, and I do accept that, HG. I call you my friend when we email back and forth. I can't help it. I kind of feel friendly towards everybody, unless they're, well, even the narcissists apparently. But yeah, I know it doesn't, that you don't see me as a friend.
Yeah,
And that fucking hurts, God damn it. I know. That is quite an advantage too that you have, that we talked about earlier, because most people can't wrap their minds around that, my friend. We do have guilt. We do have some conscience. It must be such an advantage to, right off the bat, just that people aren't going to assume that they're dealing with a conscienceless person, somebody that doesn't feel friendship. So you kind of have a certain advantage, at least at the beginning. Do you not? With most people?
Absolutely. And the whole point is, there are instances where people often say, when you come to my work, I make it very clear what I am. I tell you up front, I am a narcissistic psychopath. That is what I am. So you're put on notice of that. So you can make an informed decision for yourself. Does that trouble me? If so, you don't need to access my work. That's a disadvantage for you, because you're failing then to access brilliant work, but you don't have to. You've got fair warning. Naturally, in my day-to-day life, I don't tell anybody what I am, because that would be the move of an idiot, because by explaining that to them, I'd be there'd be transference of power. So I wouldn't talk about that. But the point is that everybody within what I would call blog world, within YouTube world, is more or less aware of what I am. I think some people come along and sometimes go, "Are you a narcissist?" And it's like, yes, it's plastered all over the site. Come on. And you really don't think that. But those that have been put on notice often later say, "I sometimes have to remind myself, HG, of what you actually are." And to me, that's one of the highest forms of compliments that you could ever give me, because it demonstrates how I'm able to fit in and make you forget what I truly am. And that is the aim of all of us, my kind, is to fit in. So you think that you're dealing with someone just like you, then you're all easier to control, etc.
Which is exactly why you're so good at what you do. As noted, ironic HG telling Doug he's not really his friend in quite a friendly, confiding manner. Exactly. That's how he manipulates.
Well, precisely.
Well said.
Exactly. I'm not going to turn around and insult Doug and start throwing some at him. I'm simply explaining. I also, in fairness, I'm not going to patronize Doug by saying, "Oh yeah, he's definitely my friend," when he knows that, because he's accessed my work so much, he understands that you can use the term, but he doesn't. But he knows that it's not in the true sense of narcissists would interact with. So actually, it's a compliment to say that to Doug, because he understands my work. And so I'm not going to condescend him by going, "Oh yes, he truly is my friend," when actually he knows, well, I can't be, because you're a narcissistic psychopath. And it's that honesty which makes the relationship between Doug and I work.
And I really do appreciate, as well as the listeners and people we have tuning in, HG, that because your work has helped save literally lives, it's hard not to feel friendly towards you, knowing damn well that you don't have to reciprocate the same feelings. And it's totally fine, by the way. I'm just glad that you've allowed me to interview you so much, man, and people can learn from your work. Heinrich, how are you doing? Unpopular opinion: empaths can better manipulate because they can feel what the other people feel, so you can play with it. Narcs have to guess sometimes. That's interesting. What would you say to that?
Empaths are not designed to manipulate.
Exactly.
And therefore, somebody who believes that they are better able to manipulate because they can feel what the other person feels
is a narcissist.
May well be an unaware narcissist. And that's the arrogance of thinking in such terms.
Wow.
It isn't necessarily about guessing, because we learn the way that people respond.
Mm-hmm.
So we recognize what causes hurt. We recognize the facial expressions that show that somebody's upset, irritated, and the way that somebody is being insulted. So we pick up on that pretty quickly. It's something that we will learn during our childhood, so that when we appear as an adult, we have all of that, and we are designed to manipulate in the way that the shark's designed to swim through the water. Empaths aren't designed to manipulate. In actual fact, although it's relevant to say, yes, they can feel what the other person is feeling, you've still got to get through that barrier, which is your emotional empathy, which is basically saying, do not manipulate. And so that slows the empath down. So they have it's not a skill that they have. It's not a skill that's regularly exercised. It's a skill which has a handbrake on it. And therefore, absolutely, an empath can manipulate. Of course they can. And they can manipulate a narcissist. I wouldn't recommend that they do so for reasons that I've expanded on many occasions. But the fact remains that whilst it can be done, they're not particularly skilled at it. And that's why it invariably backfires. Whereas to us, manipulation is meat and drink. We do it subconsciously, and amongst aware narcissists, consciously also.
Great answer, man. Thank you. This coming in from GQ. How are you? If he's so self-aware, I think I've asked him this GQ before. Does he have the tools to not be narcissistic? In other words, HG, if you know so much about yourself and the empaths, I asked you, I think before, wouldn't you have the quote intellect or intelligence? I don't want to insult you, whatever word you want to use there, to understand yourself that being that way, I should stop doing that. I should use the tools and knowledge I have to change. What would be the answer to that?
I'm incapable of change, and nor do I have any willingness to change, even if I were able to do so. I am an effective unit as I am, therefore I see no reason to change, and I can't be changed. You're in effect asking me to pull my lungs out and carry on breathing.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor to drive it home, because that is the big issue, isn't it? It took me forever, and that's why I love the phrase, once you know, you go. And the fact that you hammer home, you can't have anything to do with these people. And also, they're eternally attached to you, right? I mean, they could come back 5 years later and hoover you once you think you got them out of your life. So they always own you. You never own them, and they can never change.
What happens is people naturally, because they are capable of changing their behaviors, they project that onto me and think, well, he understands what he is, therefore he must be capable of change. No, there's two aspects of that. Although I know what I am, I cannot change. It's like saying, oh, well, I understand the principle of aerodynamics. Why can't I fly? Because I'm not designed to. I am not designed to be anything other than a narcissistic psychopath. And therefore, I can't change.
And since you haven't had any quote,
and even if and furthermore, I see no reason to, even if it were possible.
Yeah. Would you take 5 seconds of knowing what it felt like on the other side just so you could revert back, or do you literally not give a shit what other people might feel that you lack?
I have an intellectual curiosity as to what it's like, and therefore it would be, from a experimental point of view, interesting to feel the things that I can't feel. But I'm not interested in it being permanent. I see those things as disadvantages.
I understand. It's a good question. Bolting onto that. So do you despise hypocrisy?
Indeed. I regularly flag it in other people.
What if you yourself were...
This one's wife being a prime example of that hypocrisy. But narcissists invariably are hypocritical because a consequence of the black and white thinking and the compartmentalization that goes on. That's what anybody has the capacity to be a hypocrite, of course, but it's mainly narcissists that are hypocrites, because the narcissist will do something and then the narcissism wipes that from the record, and then the narcissist does something else and then doesn't see that they've been a hypocrite. And even if you were to point it out to them, which is a challenge, the narcissism jumps to their defense and tells them, what's this person talking about? They've made that up. Fake news. That's ridiculous. That never happened.
And since you're...
But yes,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man.
That's okay. So yes, I see hypocrisy in other people, and I do despise it.
Knowing that you said that narcissists are hypocritical, and having the
Yes.
self-awareness yourself. What do you do when you know you're being hypocritical? Do you then beat yourself up? I mean, how do you deal with that awareness when you do the same thing and call it out in other people?
You broke up slightly. Did you ask me what do I do when I know I'm being hypocritical?
Yes.
Laugh to myself.
And you are aware of it when you
I don't care.
okay. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I know when I'm being a hypocrite, but it doesn't matter because I'm allowed to do that and I will get away with it. You may try and stop me and you might pick up on the fact of my hypocrisy. Good for you. But I know that I'm doing it and I find it entertaining to see what I can get away with.
Fair enough. Again, the advantage of not having a conscience, right? Because that would blow back on people that do. Jesus,
Yes.
it's just so unrelatable, HG. But that's why I like talking to you, because it's like talking to an alien. Do I feel like an alien to you?
Do I think you're an alien? Well, no, because I understand you so well.
Can I ask you about that? What people might say, where how could you possibly understand without having the emotional content? Is it an intellectual understanding or a true understanding, so
Yes,
to
it's
speak?
intellectual understanding. You don't have to feel something. Now, go and ask your doctor. He knows how to cure you. He knows how to deal with you when you've got measles. He doesn't necessarily have to have it in order to understand it. So it's similar. I've spent a very long time. Remember, empaths are my prey. I watch them. I observe them. Very detailed. I listen to what they say because, boy, do they like talking as well.
Yeah.
And that's all well and good because I will hear what they have to say and I learn from them because that makes me all the more effective. So I understand and I then think about the way that people function, behave, and what they say and what that means. And then that helped me create all of the work that I've created, the body of material that I have created over the years has been as a consequence of what I've watched, both among my own kind, of course, and empaths, what I've heard, what I've observed, what I've deduced also. And therefore, it's all about pulling together all of those strands to create the work that you all now benefit from.
Again, thank you for your service. And how are you? HG, approximately how many primary source victims have you had in your lifetime so far? And I do believe you've discussed that in videos and such, right?
Yes. So I have a series called The Asylum of the Grotesque, which mentions some of the intimate partners that I've had. In terms of primary source victims, it's around about 28, 29.
Wow. Do you mind if I ask you, since it's been a while, do you have a current intimate partner primary source?
I do.
Is it the one we've known about, that we've talked about over the years, or is there a new one? Is that too personal?
I'm going to keep that close to my chest for the time being.
Fair enough. I guess he'll tell us about that more videos and more content coming off of that. No?
Exactly.
I
I'm
know
not
how
going to
you
issue any
think.
spoilers.
I
That's
know
stuck
how
in the
you think.
pipeline, you see.
Fucking A, man.
Mm-hmm.
Lydia, how are you? Question: what does HG think about the works of other narcissists, such as, I don't even want to say this out loud, HG, I have a feeling you're going to scream, Sam Vatkin, however you pronounce his name.
Who's that?
I knew you would say that. Come on, you know who he is, do you not?
I do. Yes.
I won't.
What do I think about his work?
Mm-hmm.
I have not accessed a lot of it because I don't see that that's necessary. People have sent me some of his material, so I've seen a few of his videos that he has created. He clearly understands a lot about narcissism. He does so from a cerebral point of view, and therefore there is value in what he has to convey. I haven't gone into a great amount of detail of what he has written or said because I have my own views and I'm not particularly interested in what other people have to say about it all. But I recognize that he is well known and he obviously brings something to the party. I think from some of the things that have been conveyed to me, he doesn't understand himself as well as he might like to think.
Mm-hmm.
particularly in light of him having his pants pulled down by a collaborator of
Oh,
his,
really? I didn't catch
which
that.
was yeah. Well,
Wow.
he collaborated with a gentleman called Richard Grannon,
Oh, right, right.
and these two had had a bit of fallings out previously. I don't want to spend too much time
Sure, I didn't know
talking
that.
about
I
it,
I know
but
I know who you're talking about.
yeah, and so he basically ended up having a bit of a thorn in his side from Mr. Grannon, which somewhat surprised me. I thought that he would really have picked up on his behaviours at an earlier juncture. Perhaps he did and chose not to do something about it. But that was interesting, and it caused me to wonder that he's perhaps in a place to talk about narcissism generally without necessarily understanding himself as much as he thinks he does. But there we are.
Are you
I know
Mhm.
that he sometimes I know, for instance, that he has used my terminology fuel, which made me smile.
Do you mind if I asked about some other person that seems to be ripping off your material that's super popular that always says you gotta check out so and so? That would be oh, who's that Indian gal? Do you know who I'm talking about that has
Dr. Plagiarizer.
yes. Or they plagiarize your material, but for some reason I'm drawing a blank. Do you know the Indian gal that has millions of subscribers on YouTube and she's supposedly the authority on narcissism? Is that ringing a bell?
Yes,
And
I know who you're talking about.
okay. It
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. Well, a couple of years ago, I noticed that she was utilizing my terminology, but was doing so incorrectly. So, on the one hand, it's flattering that she is a supposed expert, but
mhm.
feels that she has to utilize my material and appropriate it. But it would be useful for somebody who's supposedly intelligent if you actually get it right rather than using it incorrectly. And of course, it's highly amusing to me that this individual has failed to pick up on, or at least hasn't said anything about it, in relation to the narcissism of Jada Pinkett Smith, who she's had. She's been a guest on her
Oh,
show,
really?
and also in relation to some of the works of Taylor Swift, breaking it down to suggest that Taylor Swift is actually some form of victim. And so failing to pick up on those two notable narcissists really does call into question that individual's credentials. But there we are.
Excellent, excellent discussion here, man. I just wanted to throw out this super chat that someone tossed you, HG. Thank you, Melanie. Any loneliness in your life, HG, or just lack of fuel?
Only for those that get on the wrong side of me. They'll find themselves in a very lonely position. I'm not lonely because if I choose to have people around me, I will. And a lot of the time, I actually prefer not to have people around me. That's because of my psychopathy. But I have to interact with people as a consequence of my need for fuel. But a lot of the time, I would rather not deal with people.
I guess this doesn't really lead into too smoothly off of that, but let's get down to brass tacks, HG. Are you a gay man?
No,
I did
I'm heterosexual.
heterosexual. But that's actually really
But,
mhm.
sorry to disappoint you, Looney 28. If you were angling for a date, I'm sure I could take you out for a drink and make you laugh,
Looney,
but no,
don't do
not
it,
putting your hand
man.
on
You
my
could
thigh.
this is the last man you would probably want to meet up, make your life a living hell. But do people would a narcissist use I think you talked about this in your videos, do you not? That they would flip-flop to any sexuality that need be to get the fuel, right? Even if they aren't gay. They're willing to be
Yes, I
bi
mean,
or
a narcissist
trisexual.
will have sexual fluidity where appropriate. So you do find, not all, but you do find with some narcissists that they have that sexual fluidity. It's almost like whatever's needed to keep the party going. So
Wow.
uh, they'll be bisexual because at the end of the day, the individual is just an object.
Very interesting.
I go into that in more detail in my book, Sex and the Narcissist, if anybody wants to understand more about that.
Excellent. Any videos, my friends, that we talk about or HG talks about will be linked in the description box on my channel shortly after the video publishes. Anna, question for HG. Do you have a video about your childhood and how you became a narcissist? If so, do you know the name of the video? Love your content. It's fascinating.
Thank you for the compliment, Anna. I'm pleased that you're enjoying the content. There isn't a specific video that talks about how I became a narcissist, but rather there are a series of pieces of material that you can pull together the picture. I like to do that so that you get little glimpses of my life rather than it being easy for you to find it all in one place, so that you can pull it all together. So there's aspects of my childhood that are spoken about, for instance, in the book Fuel and also in the book Fury. There are various videos. There's the I beg your pardon, there's the Knowing HG series,
Mhm.
which tells you more about me, and it has references back to my childhood in there also. And there are many videos, too numerous really for me to mention, that has aspects of my childhood mentioned. So, for instance, Love is a Taught Construct is one which references some of the abuse that I experienced as a child. There are other elements. Cookie Jar talks about part of my childhood as well. So there's plenty amongst all of the videos for people to go on a little treasure hunt and then be rewarded with these delicious shining golden nuggets of young HG.
And there's 6,300 videos, and climbing every day that we showed you at the
There
beginning,
are.
and he started the newest channel in 2019. So the man's productivity is just absolutely fascinating. ICU, welcome. Question: HG, is it common for narcissists to develop drug problems? And can a true narcissist develop a fox empathy or fake, however you pronounce that, fake empathy while doing
Um,
drugs?
it is relatively common for narcissists to have issues with drugs. First of all, the lack of accountability and the sense of entitlement that a narcissist has means that drug taking is seen as something that's natural to do. It's also a fuel substitute. The sensations that are generated from drug taking are similar to that of the receipt of fuel. So, therefore, it can act as a fuel substitute for the narcissist also. Spending other people, stealing to fuel a drug habit, taking drugs whilst at work, taking drugs which are damaging a relationship, etc. The narcissist doesn't care. So again, if you like, the default settings of a narcissist, that sense of entitlement, that absence of emotional empathy, the lack of accountability, all of those things lend themselves to being a drug taker, because the narcissist is less likely to question themselves as to doing so. And because there's nothing to rein them in terms of conscience, guilt, or emotional empathy, it can move into the realms of being problematic. Then the second part, can a true narcissist develop a faux empathy while doing drugs? Well, the effect of the drug is to make the narcissist feel fueled. So they become ebullient, they're fizzing. And where that narcissist has a cognitive empathy, that can cause them to exhibit that cognitive empathy, which looks like they're being truly empathic. So the answer is yes, it can cause the narcissist to appear like they're being empathic towards you.
And then just to jump onto that, I think I already know the answer, but is there any drug, is there any kind of out there experience that someone had had on ayahuasca or something that's supposed to be a healing plant? I've never tried it. Is there something that can actually crack open the empathy that's been dead in a narcissist the whole time? I already think I know the answer to that. That would be no, right?
You can't inject empathy into somebody that doesn't have it. It has to
Right.
be there to be found, and we don't have it, so you can't crack it open.
That makes complete sense. By the way, Brooke, real quick, what I mean after the video publishes, or Book of Shadows, sorry, I don't know why I said Brooke. Just after the video, after we go live, I go in the description box a couple hours afterwards and find everything, listen to the video back, find everything that HG mentioned, and then throw them in the description box. Question coming in for HG. Teresa, how are you? Question: can HG define what he means by a psychopathy? Good question.
Well, my psychopathy is a common term for what's now known as antisocial personality disorder. So it manifests in me as a callous disregard for the rights and obligations of other people, a hyper-focused ability to get what I want, no matter what the cost to other people, because I don't care. It means I don't experience fear or anxiety. It means that I see people very much as objects that are there to be utilized by me, that I have a disregard for the applicability of rules and regulations and laws. I don't see that they are something that should apply to me, because I'm allowed to do what I want to. I conform to norms to the extent that I see a value in doing so, but there are many things that I would do which might not be detected, which would not be in adherence to appropriate social norms. I have the irritability that occurs as a consequence of the fact that I get bored very quickly. So I need to be stimulated. So that's why I find toying with people entertaining and interesting. And that combined with the absence of any remorse and any concern for anybody. So those are essentially the main tenets of my psychopathy.
Excellent. I hope that clears it up, my friend. Phoenix, how you doing? HG, in a previous interview, you mentioned that you've killed but not murdered. For you, what's the difference between killing and murdering?
It's a legal definition. In some instances, killing can be lawfully undertaken. Murder is a crime.
You don't have to answer any question, and I know you won't, but I'm just going to throw it out there if you're able to answer it. Does that appertain to what you might do in your job? I know you're not going to answer that. Let's just skip that one. I'm always looking for clues, man, because I think I have you sussed on what you might do for a living.
I was going to answer it, but you've moved on now. So there you are.
Oh, no, I have not. No, I have not. Please, man. Let's take it back 10 seconds. The floor is yours, sir.
It is linked to two aspects of my life, one of which is professional, the other I am not going to reveal.
Wow. I wish I could find that, because that kind of jumps onto the question where someone asks, maybe I can summarize it because there's so many questions flying by, HG, about you being an excellent crime solver because of your narcissism and your ability to maybe see the dark side. What would you say to being a sleuth of sorts?
I think that's entirely correct. As a consequence of the way that my mind works and the way that I assimilate information, I don't operate really through feelings. What I do is I operate through logic and evidence, which is something I always try and teach my readers and viewers. And so what I do is, it's a little bit like Sherlock Holmes, really, in that you look for the information, pull it together and deduce from it. So it's a similar way of approaching things. And because I'm unhindered by emotional distractions, it enables me to be very effective at what I do. So I am able to make those deductions and apply my mind in that particular way. There's also an aspect of where a lot of it's done subconsciously. So if you could imagine it was like a film and I enter a room, I think a good example of this is, the Equalizer films with Denzel Washington. And when it's about to kick off, it kind of shows him looking around at various things. He realizes that he can see a reflection in the window and man is distracted because of his wristwatch. So he takes all of those things in, but it happens in a picosecond because of the way that I've been trained and the way that my mind naturally works. So accordingly, that gets pulled in, all of that information, and one responds to it. So it provides one with a natural ability, but it's all done at a sort of super fast speed.
Thanks for that answer, man. Gina, how are you? HG, besides being skilled at playing the world's smallest violin, what other instruments, perchance, do you play? And at what age did you become interested in music, particularly Depeche Mode?
I am proficient in the piano, the guitar, and the willy banjo. What age did I become interested in music? I started piano lessons when I was 7. But I wouldn't say I was necessarily interested in music at that point. I was told that I was going to learn the piano, so I did. And I resented doing so.
Was that part of your parents, maybe your mother or your father, pushing you to be a virtuoso, pushing you to be the best in everything? And God damn it, little HG, you got to get on that piano at 7 and bust the key so you can make the family tradition proud because perhaps they were musicians and such.
In essence, my father wanted me to do it because he saw that music is interesting, expression of personality, and he saw that it's a useful thing to have on your curriculum vitae. For my mother, it was quite simply, I believe that you're going to be a really gifted pianist, and of course that would make her look good. So naturally, because she's a narcissist, it was all about her. It was all about wanting me to do it to make her look.
Exactly. I can relate to that from my mother. We've talked about that.
Yeah, she was the one who cracked when it came to my attendance. So I used to regularly go through things such as I would play football and I'd deliberately ask one of my friends to jump onto my hand in his football boots so then I could say, I can't go to my piano lesson. Look, my hand is injured.
Really?
In order to try and get out of it. Yeah, or stick my hand. Burnt my hand. I can't go.
Wow.
But then over time, I actually started to see playing, so then I stopped doing that.
Do you still play today?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Next time you come on HG, if we can get you on here again, I'd love to hear you bust out a tune before we get into the next interview.
I'll get the old comb and paper and.
There you go, guys. You just heard some music from HG. Bianca, how are you doing? What are your favorite narcissists, HG, in pop culture? Mine is Frank Underwood. Oh, that's a great one.
Frank Underwood is an excellent choice. Of course, he was Francis Urquhart in the British version. So naturally, being loyal to my home country, I would choose Francis Urquhart. So he is a very good example. In terms of other favorite narcissists in pop culture, I'd have to have a think about that, because I'd want to select the ones that are most appropriate, because there are quite a few representations that we see. And obviously, I've spoken about the way that you have a television representation of them. Certainly, Frank Underwood is up there as one, or Francis Urquhart, as I have said. I'll have to come back to that one.
Sure. Now, HG, I know you're a busy man. We're on the hour. Do you want to maybe take 2 or 3 more questions and roll out of here, and we can tell people where to meet you? I feel like we're passing over the time.
Yeah,
here.
I have an engagement coming up shortly, so let's do another 5 minutes. Much as I'd like to stay and
Sure.
talk longer, but I think this works really well. So I think we should do this again.
Would you be down for that?
Oh,
Would you be down for
absolutely.
this? Because I like this, and I think the audience is enjoying it too.
Yeah, and I think if we organize it so that I know in advance, we'll do a 2-hour slot so we can cover as much as we possibly can. Because there's plenty of, and I can see out of the corner of my eye, lots of really good questions, and obviously we can't get to them all. But let's do another 5 minutes, and then I have to go, and then we'll organize to speak on another occasion, and we'll do a 2-hour slot, and we'll give it some advertisement beforehand as well, so people know that it's coming, so they can sit and think up some fiendish questions for me to deal with.
Fantastic. Thanks, man. And guys, I just hit this with HG Tudor in like the last hour before, just because I thought this would be fun to go live, and has been great. So we'll organize it a little bit better. We'll get rid of the little delay or whatever. But let's take a couple more questions. And this has been great. Thanks for joining us, guys. Angela, HG, do you believe all empaths are addicted to narcissists? I would say he's going to say yes, or just more susceptible.
I don't believe that they are. I know that they are addicted. It forms a fundamental plank in the narcissist-empath dynamic.
I can almost feel people screeching at what he just said, but I believe that to be true. And the more you can recognize that, if you are an empathic person, you'll be saving yourself a lot of heartache, and you won't beat yourself up as to why am I attracting the same people or whatever. You can learn to recognize the red flags, right, HG? That's what we,
absolutely.
That's what we're learning from you, but they're always going to come into your life.
2 key things to do. 1, know what the red and black flags are. 2, get your emotional thinking down so you pay attention to them.
And that's it. That's it. As soon as you know that.
That's the fundamental things that you need to do. There's a lot more around all of that. But in essence, in order to protect yourself, you need to know what narcissists look like. So that's the red flags and the black flags. And then you need to be sober, in effect, so that you recognize it and you pay heed to it. Because if your emotional thinking is too high, you won't spot the red flags. Or if you do, you won't pay any attention to them.
And the emotional fortitude to stick with keeping that person blocked, to not, when you're vulnerable and you talk to them or they squeeze their way into your life 3 weeks later, to always keep, once you know, you go and you don't fuck around.
You are plagued by what I call chains of attachment. And I've got a video that's coming out in an hour or 2 about that, about the chains of attachment and what they are and how that plagues the empath. So I'd encourage people to go and watch that video.
Fantastic. And we'll wind down so people can do just that. So we'll end off with this one final question. And HG, people are dying to know, God damn it, will we ever get to see you?
You already have. I appear in a couple of my videos, and I've appeared in various pictures and so forth on Instagram. Not that you'd be able to say, oh, that's such and such. So you don't get to see my face close up, but I actually do appear all over the place.
Really?
Yeah.
Sleuths in the audience? Go try to
But I
find.
don't.
No, I don't
But
want to.
I do it in a way that protects my identity. So you can sort of see my body shape. You can see my arms. You can see my hands. In some instances, you see
I
like my
see.
forehead and so forth. But you're not going to be able to get any information that would enable anybody to identify who I am. That
I
I'm going
see.
to save. I'm going to save for a great unveiling where I'll sell tickets at $10,000 each.
You could probably. I mean, you joke, but you could probably get that much just from the anticipation. But weren't you
Mm.
thinking about one day that you might actually, show your face?
It is one of those things which comes up where people say, "Will you do it?" There are arguments on both sides of the divide as to why I should and why I ought not to do it. And at the moment, there's no need for me to do so. This is about the creation of my legacy and about the provision of my information. And also, of course, on the side, I'm Banksy, you see, so I engage in some artwork. And I so need to keep that identity hidden as well, even though recently a video resurfaced where he made mention of his first name. But no, the point is that it serves me to keep my identity hidden because that enables me to give you all of this information. If I can't do that, I can't continue to do this. And therefore, that's the trade off. I remain anonymous and I can provide you with all this information, and that's how it works. One day that might change, but at the moment, it's not going to.
Great point. I don't need to see you either. Just keep doing what you're doing, and everybody knows, at least if the comments are anything to go by, that you're Hugh Grant. So I think we have that sorted, anyways. How many times have you been accused of being Hugh fucking Grant?
I think at the last count, it was 172 occasions that I have had the
That's it?
accusation of being Hugh Grant, which is quite lazy, really, because it's,
No
oh, yeah,
shit.
HG is Hugh Grant. And I can understand that if you're not an English speaker, you might think that I sound similar to him, but we don't sound similar at all.
Not at all, actually. Yeah, there you go, guys. I don't even know why that keeps coming up. It is lazy. Guys, thank you so
Good.
much for joining us. And HG, as we roll out of here, would you like to tell people real quick where they can find you and what you offer? And my friends, if you're on my channel, I'll link it in the description box. If you're on HG's, you know where to find it.
Thank you, all of you, for joining Doug and I today. It's been a particularly lively session and some excellent questions asked. Do keep them coming, and we'll notify you about the next time that we do this. It's very important to have your input, and it makes it an enjoyable experience for everybody concerned. If you want to learn more about what I have to tell you about narcissism and psychopathy, you can read about it at narcsite.com, or you can come to my YouTube channel, which Doug is kindly displaying on the screen now. And as mentioned, there are over 6,000 videos, not just about celebrities, but about lots of different aspects. There's playlists covering all manner of different manipulations and different facets of the dynamic. And in the menu bar at narcsite.com or in the video descriptions, you'll see the links that can take you to purchase products. And today there's a 50% discount available in the Knowledge Vault on a whole range of material. I'd encourage you to take advantage of that. And you can arrange to speak to me. So,
hey, it's Adam from StreamYard.
Join all of these people who have managed to achieve freedom. Then what you can do is you can organize an audio consultation with me, and I'll give you precisely what you need, straight from the horse's mouth, no messing around, no mollycoddling, shooting from the hip. And it's hugely effective, and you'll be able to join all of those thousands of people that have spoken to me and have succeeded in beating the narcissist.
Again, thank you very much. And I know I speak for many people. I coming out of a cult and dealing with a narcissistic family, and you guys out there that have dealt with an emotionally abusive relationship will know just how important it is to even come across this information in your lifetime, because you could spend a lifetime without this knowledge, thinking it's you and living a hell when you could actually be free simply by accessing this man's knowledge. HG, I only have the Scientology outros. on my channel. So those watching on HGs that have no idea what the hell I'm about to play, this is a little outro that I'm just going to play that we usually do of kind of being around Hollywood, the cult of Scientology, and my exit. And I do owe my exit big time to running across HG's information when he had his first YouTube channel in 2016. I look forward to speaking to you again, my friend, even though I know that I'm not your friend. And just thanks for everything, man. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I look forward to checking out that video that's coming up.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Guys, take care, and we'll see you soon.
Found out long ago. It's a long way down the holiday road. Holiday road. Holiday road. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Take a ride on the West Coast.
What's your dream? Some dreams come true, some don't. But keep on dreaming. This is Hollywood.